All right, we're all set. Sorry about the delay there. Sure, everything's going. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the MediaJel podcast today. My name is Guillermo Bravo. I'm the chief evangelist here at MediaJel. We're focused on connecting cannabis, CBD, and alcohol companies to compliant cannabis consumers through mobile devices, media channels at every stage of the customer buying journey. And I'd like to introduce David Paleschuck, CPG branding expert, consultant, and the author of the book Branding Bud, the Commercialization of Cannabis. Welcome to the show, David. How are you?
Hey, Guillermo. How are you today? Thanks for having me.
Fantastic, fantastic. How's the new year been for you so far?
So far, so good. It's I guess we're 3 weeks in, but all good. How about you?
Everything has been great so far. Just embracing the new year and just head down, focused on growing the business and connecting with individuals like yourself and building the community. So excited to have you on board and learn more from you and share your insights with all our audience.
Cool. I'm excited.
Likewise. So today our topic is going to be branding with a buzz. So strategies to scale your cannabis business with David Paleschuck. So, you've had many years of experience in your background and how you found your way into the cannabis industry.
Yeah. But it's been a combination of things along that journey that sort of allows me to do what I do today. I guess first and foremost, I should say, one of the biggest influences in my life is I used to be a professional skateboarder when I was very young, many, many years ago. But the folks that I've connected with in that community are people that most people have heard of today, in terms of professional athletes, and I stay connected in that realm. But what that also provides me with, or where that also led me to, was I went to Parsons School of Design. I owned an art gallery for many years. So again, today I'm able to leverage, whether it's my action sport friends or it's my artist friends, into the cannabis industry, and leverage art and influencers in a way that I never thought I would be able to. But having said that, my journey really is after owning a gallery for many years and the economy falling apart in the early 90s, I went back to school for my MBA. I came out, I worked at American Express, MasterCard, then worked on the agency side, supporting Pepsi as they rebranded Mountain Dew into an action sport brand, again, leveraging my contacts. And then finally recruited to Microsoft, where I spent 7 or 8 years, during the launch of Zune, which was their MP3 player, and then into Xbox and Windows Mobile Phone. In 2012, when the I-502 law passed in Washington State, and at the same time in Colorado, I decided to leave Microsoft. I saw many of my friends in Washington State leaving Amazon and Microsoft and Starbucks, and decided that I would leave as well. That was that was just before. That was 2011. So it's almost 11 years now that I've been in the cannabis industry. And in some ways, I think it was early to jump, but in many other ways, I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of people. One of the things I did coming out was really consulting. And I started to consult at a lot of dispensaries that were opening up. And one of the things I realized very quickly, because of my gallery experience, I had a knack for putting things on pedestals and making them look pretty and charging lots of money for them. I also knew how to merchandise. But my years in the credit card industry also taught me about different types of shoppers. So there's a transactor, somebody that comes in maybe for their gas or coffee. They know exactly what they want. They want to be on their way, and other people that are shopping. And so that totally relates to a cannabis dispensary or adult use store, where maybe you have somebody who knows what they want. It's a pre-roll. They want a pre-roll of Durban poison. They're in and out because they only have a half hour for lunch. And then you have, pardon the stereotype, you have a soccer mom that's coming in for the first time and looking at the wall of form factors, from flour to, edibles, beverages, tinctures, pills, transdermal patches, sublingual slips, and they're trying to figure it out. They may still be on what's the difference between indica or CBD, or worse yet, does CBD get you high, right? So there are so many different people along the spectrum of knowledge in cannabis that you also need to reach them where they are. So initially, that was sort of my understanding, how I came into the industry. And then from there, jumped and worked at Dope Magazine and spent 4 years at Dope Magazine. I was the vice president of brand partnerships and licensing. I also wrote a 3-page article called Branding Bud, which was about the evolving brand landscape over the course of the 4 years that I was there. And that was eventually what rolled up into being the book. But yeah, I've been around the industry a bit. I've been a chief brand officer at a few of the better known companies, and I love what I do. I love the industry.
You have quite a story in the background in art and in skateboarding. How are those industries similar to, let's say, a cannabis industry? Is there any similarities there between some of your experience from those different categories?
There is.
Yeah.
It's funny. There absolutely is, and on the surface, one could say, of course there is, because all skaters are stoners and they go together. But that's not really it. I mean, maybe that's a part of it, but where it really comes together is that there's a community. So in the skateboarding world, there's a community of skateboarders. They speak a language of their own. They understand each other. They do things that are, if you will, only known to them. And in the cannabis community, it's very much the same thing. And so understanding lifestyle and understanding lifestyle marketing and understanding how those activities appeal to a certain consumer totally, connects in my mind. And even further, the art community as well. I'll repeat myself if I go through it, but essentially it's that same thing. And then, it's what I've even thought about further is, how has my 12 years in the credit card industry, marketing credit cards, sort of connected with this as well? And the truth is, I think of it as trust marketing, right? So, American Express, don't leave home without it.
Yep.
MasterCard, priceless, right? It's connecting with these moments, right? MasterCard's one of the longest running advertising campaigns, which I was a part of developing, is priceless. And what they did was they connected the use of a credit card with this great moment. And they shared so many moments, but the one I remember was, the dad taking his daughter to the baseball game, and being able to make that happen because he had his credit card. And so, those are moments of trust, right? It's like, and don't leave home without it is totally, all about trust. And so on that level, I think cannabis and cannabis marketing comes in and falls into the same thing, and it's really, the essence of what a brand is, right? A brand is a promise, and the ability to consistently deliver on that promise. And so if your credit card doesn't work, and you've got the credit, but it's the terminal or it's the system, you're upset, right? You should be able to just pay for it. And so it's those things that you rely on, that you trust. And more often than not, that's consistency. So all of those things totally tie into, in my opinion, branding, marketing, and probably more than most, the cannabis industry, building the authenticity, the legitimacy, the credibility, the relevance, all of those things come together. Otherwise, you're nobody in this industry.
Yeah, and I really like what you said there on what branding is, right? A brand is something that a promise that you're making to your consumer, to your audience. And it's really your job to deliver upon that. And, whether that's product consistency, as you said, are there any other ways in the cannabis industry that we're really moving this forward as far as Or maybe some ideas of brands that you feel like are doing a great job about keeping their content and their messaging, their value consistent with their brand.
Yeah, I think there are a number of brands that are doing that. And before I even start throwing out brand names, I mean, I think the way to create or maintain a credible brand, right, is understand who your customer is. If you can best understand who your customer is, then you can serve them and meet them where they are. But really, it comes down to know your customer, know their need, state, and ritual. So if they are a soccer mom and they can't smoke in front of their kids, maybe they're using a transdermal patch or a tincture or a capsule. If they're a skater, again, total stereotypes. If they're a skater and they're looking for a blunt or whatever it is they consume, you need to meet them where they are, right? And so that's really important. Just a quick side note, one thing I'll never forget is my son was at the playground playing with his young friends. This was a couple of years back. I was hanging out with the moms, and one of the moms pulls out a tin of mints. And she said, "Does anybody want mommy mints? Want some mommy mints?" And it was funny because I first thought they were Altoids, but there's a brand called Mr. Moxie's Mints. And Tim
I'm aware of that brand,
right. And so Tim Moxie is based here in Seattle. And so I'm totally aware of that brand. And I started cracking up and I said, "Mommy mints." And long story short, they all got embarrassed. And then I explained to them that I was in the cannabis industry. So we all had a moment of community. But that was just a great opportunity in terms of, or a great moment in terms of a brand connecting with a community of these women that are looking after their kids all day, and they're taking these mints and they're microdosing and they're living their life. They're parenting, but they're still consuming cannabis. And it is totally out of the stereotype of maybe the skater stoner archetype that I've referred to before. But so really, know who your customer is, connect with them at their need, state, and ritual, which leads to form factor. And then really the last thing is that overlay is the brand archetype, is what kind of brand is this, which really comes down to what type of promise am I making? What does this brand mean to me? And to answer your question, there are a number of brands that I think actually really do, speak to specific groups. One of the things that comes to mind in Washington, they're also in NorCal, they're also in Oklahoma, is a brand called Saints. And Saints joints are boxes of pre-rolls where they work with, again, artists to basically do these limited edition collectible boxes. So first and foremost, their pre-rolls are amazing, and their flower is not shake and anything else. It's all bud and all the finest, which goes without saying. You need a quality product, or at least a product in line with your promise. So if it's a value product, right, or a bottom shelf product, at least it should align with that. But don't have bottom shelf flower and tell everybody it's the best flower around, which is something that most brands do in this industry. It's like our weed is the best weed, and
everyone says that, right?
That's right. That's right. So you just have to be mindful. If you could deliver that, then great, but just be mindful of that promise, right? So so it's really aligning of all those things and those promises and really where you are in terms of expectations with your customers. How do you manage those? That are really important. In the case of Saints Joints, what they do is they work with artists that are well known in certain communities. So those could be Jeremy Fish in the art and skate community. They did a line of 12 limited edition boxes with tattoo artists from different states. So again, people who are really interested in tattoos and in the cannabis community collected those and were really all about those boxes. So there's really this connection just beyond selling you great weed. I think Can on the beverage side, does a great job in terms of connecting with the LBTGQIA plus community. That's always a mouthful.
Yeah.
And but they've done that recently, connecting with the community. They've also really shown that in their ads as well. Another thing I think they've done really great is talked about the really the exchange, if you will, of alcohol for cannabis. So their ad campaigns. One of them is Hangovers Canceled, and canceled is CANN because that's the name of their brand. Those types of things. So they've been able to sort of talk about socializing and sessioning with a new form factor, beverages, in a different way that could be interchanged with alcohol. So there's lots of things going on in the industry that are really, really interesting.
Yeah, and people are getting innovative now. They're figuring out ways to stay within the compliance and the regulations and everything that comes with advertising your brand in cannabis. And as you said, with the approach on the from the skating community and making this more of a lifestyle, and cannabis is really diverse in that way, right? You have the people. I saw this at Hall of Flowers. There was a big uptick in almost like nightlife entertainment category of the cannabis space. It was real, front and center. There's always been the health, medicinal approach to this. There's always been the lifestyle cannabis. The cannabis aficionado. There's the health and lifestyle as well. So it's interesting to see how this is all coming to the forefront. And just the ads. We talked a little bit about it on LinkedIn, but the Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg collaboration, that's a unique one there that's been getting some good impression and really normalizing cannabis in the mainstream. Yeah. And it's just as you suggested, we joined the industry way back when, before any of this was really taken into account, and right when Colorado and Washington went legal. So it's exciting to see the progress, and that really brings me to the book that you've written. So the first book on cannabis branding. So Branding Bud, the commercialization of cannabis. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and share your insights?
Yeah, sure. So first off, as someone that got into the cannabis industry 11 or 12 years ago, I was trying to make heads or tails of what the industry is. And not only that, but even though I consumed for many years, just still trying to better understand how to maybe even best say this, how do I tell my friends back in New York, where I'm from, what's going on in Washington? And if they only saw this, they couldn't believe what was going on here. And the funny thing is that I had, when I worked at MasterCard, I spent 2.5 years twice a month in Europe. And so I would go spend time in Amsterdam, and I'd always tell my friends about Amsterdam, and this is years and years ago, and no one would believe me. And now here I am in Washington 10 years ago, and my friends in New York are like, you're crazy. But what I realized was that there was a story and an industry evolving, and that we needed to educate people about that, not only in market, but outside of the market as well. And so I guess the book in many ways was sort of my journey, and it's not at all about me. It just explains the things that I was questioning. Like, for example, why is cannabis is a plant? Why did it end up where it is? So the book starts off with all these questions about the legal, political, socio-demographic aspects, all the baggage that the industry has. Why do we call it, or why do some people call it cannabis versus marijuana? What's the baggage around marijuana? Yeah. What was the history with the Marijuana Tax Act and Harry Anslinger and all of the other the anti-marijuana craze, if you will, during Prohibition and then some. And
the
so
reefer madness, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So why why was the person in charge of what was then the equivalent to the DEA saying that, marijuana drove colored men to do crazy things and drove white women to sleep with colored men? I mean, that is insane. It's insane anybody could say it or think it, but nonetheless, that was the propaganda of the time. So I was curious, like, what was this all about? And so I looked into that, and I started to, really just unwind what that was and unpack what that was. And then from there, started to get an understanding of like, okay, I understand why there are stoner stereotypes and tied into, the hippies and tie-dye and all these other things. And really, I talked through that. And I talked through, how it came about, what was Prohibition about, how it came through into pop culture with Cheech and Chong and Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Weeds and all the other sort of things that brought cannabis, to the fore. And then start to speak about the laws changing, how things changed, and really brought it into where we are today. Then from there, I speak about who cannabis consumers are, and I worked with Headset and a number of other data companies to really get some data around this, so I could connect the dots. So it's just not me, talking or thinking about this. That there's actually things I could use as anchors and hooks to grab onto. And then really I guess the biggest part of the book is, the form factor chapter, where I go through flowers, waxes, shatters, butters, tinctures, capsules, beverages, edibles, transdermal patches, sublingual slips, and other innovative, in vape carts, other innovative form factors, and really start to break down, what these brands are all about. And then really after that, come out of that realizing that there's 14 cannabis brand archetypes, and I'll run through them really quick. And just to be clear, they're not mutually exclusive. Often they overlap, but these are the hooks that these brands are using to pull you in as a consumer. So, one could say, I'll start off with the first one, counterculture. And one could say in a certain way that any cannabis brand is a counterculture brand, but a counterculture brand, a nostalgic brand, a novelty brand, a foodie brand, a regional brand, health and wellness brand, celebrity brand, prohibition brand, art and design, gender, value, cultivator, luxury, and charity. And I'll give you an example. Whoopi and Maya, is a cannabis brand that I actually don't think is around anymore, but it's still a perfect example, which is Whoopi Goldberg, celebrity, a gender-based brand because it focuses on benefits specifically for women as it relates to cannabis. There was a charity component to it as well. So if you bought something, we gave something out. But even the charity or cause brand, there's so many of them now, whether it's Justice Joints, 40 Tons, or there's many more that are just not coming to me right now. Evidence is another brand. There's got to be probably 8 to 10 social equity brands, but those are the hooks that they're selling us on, and those are the things that either appeal to us or don't. But it's interesting to sort of see that, because that breaks it down really from a marketing perspective and a consumer perspective, and then we start to better understand who we're appealing to them and how we're appealing to them.
Well, that's a lot to unfold there, and thank you for sharing the different archetypes within the cannabis industry. That's that's really the starting point, right? As you said, it's the promise that you're making to your audience, to your consumer. And you really have to speak to them and craft content and ensure that your values are in line with these different archetypes. So glad to hear that. And speaking of 40 Tons, we've actually recently partnered with 40 Tons. So we met them at the MJ Impact there in Las Vegas, same time as MJ BizCon, and we really love their story. And we we really wanted to support them, right? The inclusion factor, the BIPOC communities, and we offered them a $40,000 grant this year to help get their message out there and to share their message with the audience, within California and beyond. And it really just hit home for me, being in California and just the impact that they're making in the different underserved communities, and really transitioning some of these nonviolent ex-cannabis offenders and getting them back in the workforce, and building their headshots, their resumes, and providing that education and tools to get them back in the workforce. So it's really messages like that I personally can get behind, and really draw on that emotional aspect of what a brand can actually mean in a community, right? So
that's right. That's exactly right. And that's what branding is all about when it's done correctly, right? Because when it's done the right way, with integrity and ethics, and you can bring a brand and its ethos to help a community and better serve a community. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, that's smart capitalism. That's just not making money. That's helping people in making money. And that's what it should be about.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot in celebrities, actually, and different influencers. One that comes to mind is Shaquille O'Neal, and he's made his money in basketball, of course, and different sponsorships. But I remember reading about him, and how he said that the money he made is exponentially more now that he's behind a message and something that's actually he's passionate about and helping others. So I know there's a lot of other people that are following that path and giving back and trying to help others. So thank you for sharing that, and looking forward to hearing more from 40 Tons and some of the other brands that are following that message and that same value. So shout out to Anthony Allegretti and Brandon over there at 40 Tons.
That's right. Anthony's been on my Clubhouse show too, and I appreciate what they're doing. So so a big shout out to them and others like them as well, because that's what differentiates our industry too. That we're many of us are looking out, for those that came before us, and it's just important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I mean, like Steve D'Angelo, Last Prisoner Project. There's a lot of people that are really making an impact in this industry and trying to right the wrongs that were made back in in the history of cannabis, right? So you consult with a lot of companies in the cannabis industry, creating brands and developing products. What goes into creating a meaningful cannabis brand?
Well, I mean, some of the things I touched on before, right? So to me, there's really four aspects of creating a meaningful brand. Is again, knowing your customer, meeting them where they are, not pulling them over to you. That means understanding their need state, their ritual, how they consume, when they consume, what they consume. And then once you're into that and you understand who they are and what form factors they use and when, then you could really start to talk to them through a number of different ways, either educating them about your product, bringing them up to speed about what what the benefits are of your product, or even just those aspirational moments, right? They just associate with your product and your brand, and that's really important. So whether it's and it's funny, I often think about products too in terms of additive or subtractive. So for example, subtractive, I'll start off there. Subtractive is, think of Advil. When you take an Advil, you have a headache, you have a backache, you have something, and you really want to alleviate that pain. Yeah. So additive is you're going to do something and you want something that's going to give you more energy, or it's aspirational, or it makes you focus, or all these other types of things. And those two, additive and subtractive, are very different mindsets. If you're looking to alleviate pain, that's very different than, wow, I want this thing to, take me away somewhere. And so you need to speak to your customers very differently, right? So if they're in pain, you need to speak to them in their pain state and how to alleviate that pain. Or if they're looking for that lift or that focus or that relaxation, you need to learn how to speak to them and meet them where they are. So if you could do that, and then the last thing is layer over the brand archetypes. And I should also say, I know I said before, they're not mutually exclusive. And even though there are 14 now, I don't know if you're familiar with Swami and Nikki from Swami Select, but I said to Swami, we were joking that he may be the 15th brand archetype, which is spiritual. So my point here being that I'm sure these are going to grow. They're not necessarily unique to cannabis, but they are the hooks that brands and consumer product goods use to speak to consumers. And as consumers, we should just be mindful of that. But and if I could say this, a brand archetype is really that shortcut. And the best way to describe this is, if I were to play 3 seconds of country music, hip hop music, jazz, and classical, immediately, everyone listening, the audience would say, yep, I like that. Or no, not interested. Like, you could immediately tell. And that's what a brand archetype is. It's just that quick glimpse of a package, a font, a color, something that gives you the cue that, oh, wait a second. And again, stereotype here. This is pink. It's for a woman. It's not for me. Or this is black and it's bold and it's macho. This is for me, right? Those are these unconscious cues that consumers either are drawn to or repelled from. And as branders and marketers, we should be aware of that.
Yeah, it would be a fun exercise if we did this with me. If what archetype would I actually be under in this category? I can give you a little insight into how I enjoy cannabis, and as you said, is adding it to an experience. That's definitely my preferred use. Going on a hike or going on the beach, doing something, enjoying music, a live concert, a movie, like really leveraging cannabis to expand upon my experience, right? And then the subtractive or the kind of negative there would be it's being active as a person. And I participate in a lot of yoga and just physical activity. So the other side of that would be leveraging cannabis and gummies, especially with CBN, for me, for maintaining sleep and also body recovery, right? So just providing the CBD to aid in muscle recovery. And I know that just from experience, a little insight is my old soccer coach from high school. He reached out to me after about 5 years of seeing me talk about cannabis in the industry and following my Instagram and social profiles. And he reached out and said, I'm creating a cannabis brand, and it's for athletes like you, right? Like people that are participating in high intensity sports like football, soccer, football. So he created a topical with a spray with rapid absorption, especially for knees and aches and different pains there. And he the company's called Medusa Leaf, and that's just a great example of how someone's bringing their passion for a sport and applying their values and whatnot to creating a brand that is embraced by a certain category, which would be the athletic or athletic category of the archetypes. And it's funny how that kind of transition. He started out working with soccer athletes, professional, semi-professional, and now he's transitioned to the pickleball industry. So taking a lot of that, those aches and pains that you get from playing tennis or pickleball now on the beach or on a court, and now he's secured a partnership with the Pickleball Association, and it's just interesting to see the evolution of how all this can come to play. And this is just from my personal experience. It's
it's interesting. I know, many brands, like for example, Apothecana, which is a great brand, started in THC, is still in THC, but also sells in CVS and Walgreens and some of the bigger pharmacies, CBD products. Their campaigns are appealing to tennis players and others. So I personally love that, because I think what that does is normalize it. And it also shows people, again, I think lots of education needs to be done around really just getting people up to speed on the basics, like, what's THC versus the other cannabinoids, let's say. And of course, CBD probably comes in first, although there's been lots of other cannabinoid development and experimentation. But I think the general public still has a really long way to go in terms of being educated. One thing you had said earlier too is, so when I look at brands and products, I look at the brand Archetypes. But when I look at consumers, consumers are a different model for me. I look at consumers. I have a 6-ring model, and in the center, I'll just run through it quickly. There's the Cannacore in the center, right? The Cannacore are probably like people like you and me that consume often and are in the industry and talk about this and live and breathe it. Then just outside of that is the Canna Comfortable, and the Canna Comfortable are probably people that are our partners or that, consume on the weekends or that type of thing. Canna Casual is the next ring out, okay, they're okay with it. They're around it every so often. Doesn't bother them. They're okay. Then as you sort of come out, there's the Canna Confused. They're the folks that are, what's the difference between THC and CBD? Then after the Canna Confused, you have the Canna Neutral. They really don't care. And then you have the Canna Contra. They're totally against cannabis. And so I liken this to, if you had 5 friends that were standing around a pool, and one of your friends happened to be an Olympic swimmer, and the other of your friend was terribly afraid of swimming, you would speak to them really different about how to come into the pool. So you jump into the pool, but your Olympic friend, swimmer friend, you're like, come on, this is great. No one's in the pool. Come join me. He dives in or she dives in, or they dive in from the deep end. And you look at your other friend and you say, hey, I know you haven't been in a pool in a long time, and I know you're concerned about it. Come on in. I'll meet you in the shallow end. I have a life preserver for you. Like, you treat it very differently. And I think that's how you need to speak to cannabis consumers as well. Either they're an expert, they're a connoisseur, and it's like, let's get down, or it's, come on, it's okay. It's okay. And you need to educate them and talk to them in a very different way. And I think if people in the industry understood that a little bit better, that there are different types of consumers at different points along their consumption path, then I think we'd be better able to address some of their needs. And again, I always say, meet them where they are. Don't expect them to join our club, right away.
Everyone uses cannabis in a different way, right? It's as you suggested, you have the archetypes, but then you have your different consumer types. I remember when I started back in the cannabis industry, I don't know how long it's been now, but I remember what was the phrase in Colorado? It was start slow, or something along those lines. And we had some recommendations on don't go above 5 milligrams on your first dose, like some of the basics, so that people avoid that negative experience, that you're not going to overdose and die, but you can you can definitely overconsume and have a bad experience. And that's similar with a lot of other substances, right? Like psilocybin, boom, you do a little too much of that. It can be an experience that you're not looking forward to. So
Yeah.
Really, I just like your analogy, especially with the pool is, come on the shallow end and maybe participate, maybe dabble in a little bit and see if it's for you. And if it's not, it's okay. Right. Like it's not,
but what's intriguing about that, what's interesting about that too, is just one example. So in Washington State, a per serving THC size is 10 megs. In Arizona, it's 50. So, so it's 5 times the difference. And one would think, wow, that's interesting. Why is it that way? Has anybody given that thought? So I think as much as taking it slow, the states really need to get on the same page. Another thing here in Washington that happens, among other states, but what's interesting is if you bought a carbonated beverage, a cannabis-infused carbonated beverage, so a soda, in a clear bottle with a crown top on it, that typically, and it has 100 megs in it, that is actually 10 servings. Now, tell me what consumer that spent their life drinking Coke and Pepsi or whatever sodas they've drank, and now they come into a adult use store and they buy a cannabis infused beverage.
Drink the whole thing, probably.
Right, they're trained to do that. The fact that even the form itself, the bottle, has a crown top. It's not a replaceable. It's not like, hey, you could use that. You're supposed to have 10 servings and be mindful of that, but the bottle isn't telling you that, right? The bottle is crack me open and drink me. So there's a lot of things that are just at odds with how the industry has sort of come to educate consumers, or maybe I should say align with the way consumers have been previously educated with other consumer product goods, right? So we just need to be mindful. Now, I'll say this too. How many people have bought a Hershey bar and knows that there are the tranches or the slices, but how many people don't pay attention to that? Maybe a Kit Kat bar is better, right? You typically break a Kit Kat bar and you eat it and it's like, cool, they designed it into the product. But if you look at a Corova brownie out of California and see that there are 1,000 megs, with no delineation for what is a slice or a serving, you're going to have some people, I don't know, sleeping for the weekend, who just ate a brownie. So I actually do think that the states need to get on the same page at some point and start talking to each other and saying, hey, we see your dosing is this, our dosing is this. What should we do to just be mindful that our dosing is 5 times more than yours, and other states probably, fall into place as well.
Yeah, that's been a recurring conversation I've had with educating new cannabis users. A common question is, what is a drink? What is the equivalent of smoking a joint? Like, what is if I want to have 2 beers, how would I do that in cannabis and have the same effect?
Right.
Yeah. So
and what's funny with that question? There's 2 things. Like, one is there should be an answer for that, or a general answer for that. But when you think about alcohol, sure, you could say like 1 shot of tequila is, I don't know, is 3 beers. But the truth is, it depends on what your tolerance is. It depends on probably what you had for lunch that day or dinner that day, or ate. How soon did you eat previous? And I could go down
so
a
many
list.
factors.
That's right. So there should be a generalization, like, hey, if you take a puff off a joint, or if you take a bite out of a brownie, and it's not really that. It's probably, if you had 5 milligrams of THC, this is typically how you would feel. And again, I mentioned Can earlier. I think they're doing a great job because they're low dose, they're microdosed. I think they're 5 megs of THC, and then maybe they have some CBD in it. But they are low dosed, and then they're sold in, I believe it's either 4-packs or 6-packs.
Okay.
But the concept is, so they're bringing sessioning, right, to the game. They're like, okay, cool. I'll show up with my 6-pack. They're microdosed. I could go through this just like I could go through a 6-pack of beer, or I could be social and hand it out to my friends, just like I would with a 6-pack of beer. So I think they're starting to apply some of the social aspects that we as humans already do into cannabis. And I think, and I think that's going to help normalize it even more. I mean, it's weird for me to say this, but I actually think when it's finally normalized, cannabis infused beverages will really be the driving form factor, because they'll be interchanged with other beverages. And let me just say it this way: beverages from the beginning of time are what humans are about, whether it's, water, milk, or blood, across, across what and that was really the basics, right? Then it was wine, then it was other things. It was beverages for us, beverages for the gods, beverages for, every occasion. Beverages talk about occasion, they talk about gender, they talk about socioeconomic status, they talk about all sorts of things. And so I believe beverages will be that normalizing factor. They'll appeal to many different segments. They'll be high dose, low dosed, fancy, not fancy. It will be just like the beverage industry, if you look at it as a whole, across bottled water into milks, into, Gatorades and sports drinks, right? And into all the things that tie back into these specific consumer needs and rituals.
Agreed. And is there any, there's a drink that I had at Hall of Flowers that I loved. It was Klaus. I don't know if you've had that by Warren, our friend Warren Babrow.
Yes.
Yeah, that was incredible. I had that at the Hall of Flowers at the at David Tran's event, the Airspace Museum event that he had.
Head above the clouds.
Yep, Head Above the Clouds. There it is.
Yep.
And that was enjoyable. I mean, I've never had a drink like that in cannabis so far, and it was just a lot of the simple ingredients. Something I would almost. I'm a big fan of kombucha, so it really reminded me of that a little bit, and the taste and the feeling that you get when consuming it. So yeah, it's just nice to see the evolution, and I'm right there with you. It's drinks is probably the fastest growing category in cannabis right now, and as things evolve, and maybe with the federal legalization, once that opens up, who knows when, 2-6+ years, who knows. Coca-Cola, they famously used other substances when creating their first Coca-Cola brands, right? And a lot of these these conglomerates, these beer companies, the Pepsi, the Coca-Cola, they're all going to create their variations of these drinks, and they're already doing it with CBD, and they're just going to continue to evolve and really, the one thing I've seen, at least with cannabis, is we had a lot of this talk about sativa indica, and everyone's genetics are different, so people can react differently to the same product. But the effect-based, like the outcome-based product, that's what I've seen a lot of, just over the last 5 years. A lot of the branding and everything has changed that. Do you see, how do you see that evolving as far as, I want to go out to a concert, my preferred method of consumption is a drink. Boom. Is there an energy drink for cannabis for that type of event side? It'll be interesting to see how that category specifically evolves in cannabis. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You just brought up something, maybe you weren't even aware of it, but
Yeah.
just like all of the events, bring in partner with alcohol companies
Yeah.
to serve their alcohol up. This is happening now. It's starting to
Yeah.
happening, and these conversations are taking place. But I think, to go back to what you said, with benefit specific, yeah, there are lots of brands now focused on what the outcome is.
Yeah.
But I also think that as more research is done, for example, Angela Pye created Canacraft's Gem and Jane. So that has THCV in it. THCV is known to be an appetite suppressant. So there's certain beneficial aspects to that as well. There are lots of other brands that do that. I know Candescent now sells their flower not by strain but by effect. So many people are doing that. I actually think that this is a great way to sell a product to the mass market, to a general consumer. I think, probably people like me and you, and perhaps folks listening, they already have their favorite strains. They've been around it for quite some time. They know the difference. So I don't think that will ever go away. But I actually feel that terpenes are perhaps the next, I mean, they are like trendy already. But I say that because I say terpenes could be potentially the next trend, because I look at terpenes very much like, well, if you look at terpenes and you look at things like linalool, which is in lavender, and you look at pinene and limonene, which is in pine and citrus, we know that if we just take aromatherapy, we know, that whether we're buying bath salts or we're buying air freshener, or we're buying whatever it is with tea, we know that lavender relaxes us and chamomile relaxes us, and it's high in linalool.
And I'm drinking here.
Exactly. And if you want to be uplifted, you're looking for the limonenes and the pinenes and those things that are the citrus that invigorates you. So in my mind, since most people fully understand that already, or I believe, or it's just more common knowledge, like, hey, lavender is relaxing, chamomile is relaxing, this is uplifting, that if we start perhaps to deliver strains or cultivars in that way, that might appeal to, I don't know, newbies coming in to say, well, I don't want couch lock, or I don't want to go to sleep, or I want to take a hike and I want to be invigorated, or yes, I am going to go out and go run for a jog while I'm high. And as a kid, I used to skateboard under the influence. I shouldn't say as a kid. As an adult, I used to skateboard under the influence. Yes. So, I understand that there's, times and reasons why and when we consume. Again, need states and rituals. Yep. So, we just need to focus on those things and serve things up in a way that people understand, or maybe have an inkling, or are like, oh yeah, sure, that makes sense. Lavender is relaxing, and citrus is uplifting. And then you can start to, these things make sense and they equate, and we're not starting over again. We're not starting from scratch, telling a newbie that they need to learn this entire new language. And I'd even say this, I drink wine on occasion. I remember when wine was getting popular, and I went out to a business dinner, and we were at a steak restaurant, and we ordered the wine, and I had a sip of the wine, and everybody there was like a newfound wine connoisseur. Yeah. And I remember saying, I don't know what the word was. I want to say peppery, but I think that's an okay word to say. But I used a word just to describe it, even though I had no clue about wine at all. Yeah. And I got laughed at the table because it wasn't a word. It wasn't a wine person's word. Yeah. It wasn't something, like gassy. Let's just use that for an example. If somebody said this tastes gassy, if you were a cannabis connoisseur, you'd be saying, what? Why would you like, what is that? And why would you even want to taste something gassy? But if you could find these words that people are already comfortable with, I don't know, maybe earthy, peppery, whatever those things are, I think that makes it a lot easier. When you start off with your own language, if you will, it's harder. I still go into Starbucks today, and what it's, to me, it's still small, medium, or large. What is Starbucks? It's like a venti, a tall. The tall is their small one, and it's just totally confusing to me. So I just say, I'll take a medium drip coffee. It's just too complicated. So but small, medium, or large is something everybody understands. Why reinvent it? You know.
I mean, it's trying to make coffee sound better, branded better, right? And charge more, right?
Yes, and they're creating a unique experience. Yeah, so I totally get that. But there are some things, and a lot in cannabis, that you just shouldn't reinvent the wheel. We should use common knowledge and common practice and best practices to serve it up the way it is. Let me give you just another quick example. A transdermal patch, right, with THC or CBD in it. It looks like a Band-Aid. So we need to treat it like a Band-Aid, right? Because people look at it and say, oh, okay, it looks like a Band-Aid, so I'm going to peel it open. So you don't want to serve that up in a new way that would confuse somebody, because built into its form factor is this functionality, right? And that, I guess, in some ways, I'm doubling up on that point earlier, where if it's 10 servings in a bottle, it should have a resealable cap. It shouldn't have a pop top. So we're hypocritical in many ways in terms of the way we're supposed to use it, but the form factor it gets served up in, or the way we serve it up. And we need to be mindful of those inconsistencies, right? Because that affects our brand promise, and the brand promise is a consistent experience. Agreed.
And thank you, David, again for all your insights. And is there any final thoughts that you'd like to share, or a message, or anything related to your mission in the industry?
Well, I start off always, I'm all about the plant. And then, from the plant, the folks that need support, need help, and that have been hurt by the previous, activities and means of what the industry has been, or lack of it. But that's where I start off. I'm honestly all about education. The more people that understand cannabis, I think the better off we'll be. Initially I wasn't a fan of celebrities, and I was kept on asking, like, what value do they bring to the industry? But the answer is they normalize cannabis, and it's only been in the last few months that I've realized that. And so, when you speak about Snoop and Martha, wow, what better way to normalize, and what better way to bring communities that wouldn't even come together to sort of come together. And so, so hopefully that helps cannabis. Hopefully that helps relationships and relations across communities that just exist. But I think cannabis can do that. I hope it does. I hope that we can normalize it, and that's really my mission. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I always love to engage in conversations. You can find me on my website at brandingbud.com, or my email, david@brandingbud.com. I'm always open and interested, and my company, Branding Bud Consulting Group, helps those brands that are trying to convey their messages in clear and consistent ways to cannabis consumers. So I'm happy to help, and I hope we as a community can offer those clear and consistent messages, and make the cannabis industry a better place.
Well, thank you again, David. And I have your book right here, actually. Everyone, go on Amazon and brandingbud.com. Support David and his mission here, and getting access to the plant to everyone, and do your own research and learn about, how you can improve yourself, how you can improve your own brand within cannabis, and, get the book. And if you need some more insights, reach out to David individually and, schedule a one-on-one with him, and, he'll do his best to help you on the consulting side. And, I guess one question I have before we part ways is, are we going to see a follow-up book anytime soon?
Yes, actually, it's funny. I have a book coming out this year for holiday, which is called Cannabis versus Marijuana, and that talks about all of the words that everybody's talking about, and they use differently, and they don't fully understand, or maybe they don't understand the history. So we'll talk about cannabis versus marijuana. We'll talk about the black market versus the legacy market. We'll talk about the entourage effect versus the symphonic effect. We'll talk about all these different things and try to get folks on the same page. So that comes out for holiday this year. Branding Bud 2 comes out April 20th, 4/20 of next year, 2023, and is already guaranteed to be about twice as thick as the current book, because there have been so many brands that have come out over the last year. Right now there's about 54 celebrity brands. So lots of, and lots of cannabinoid research and lots of things that have happened in terms of new products, new people and products and brands entering the market. So I'm excited to write about that, and that will come out, as I said, for 2023. One other thing I just want to say, because it's very important, is that a brand starts out with a name, right? And a name is everything. And Guillermo Bravo, you have got the best name ever.
Oh,
so
thank you.
So I'm envious of your name and your hair, by the way. I'll add that. So with that, I see you've got a great start for your brand. You've been doing fantastic. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, David.
It's been a pleasure to chat with you. I hope I added value, to the folks listening. And I'd love to do it again. I'm always up for chatting about cannabis and cannabis branding and where the industry is going.
Let's do it. And thank you, David, once again. Thank you for sharing your insights. And, I'm sure we'll have you on again and go dive deeper into cannabis branding and beyond. So, thanks again, David. And everyone, once again, go to brandingbud.com. Support David and reach out through his website, buy his book, set up a one-on-one call with David. And thank you again.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful week, everyone. And Happy New Year.
Right on. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you, Guillermo. I appreciate it.